Hello, I'm Dr. Suraj Panchal. In today's session, we shall discuss on topic mood stabilizers. Okay, we shall begin in this fashion. First of all, coming on to the terminologies of the mood disorders, pathophysiology of the bipolar disorder, lithium as classical mood stabilizer, and then the therapeutic status of atypical antipsychotic agents and anticonvulsants as mood stabilizers. Now coming on to the first terminologies of mood disorders. Affective disorder, these are nothing but the disorders of mood. So what is an affect? Affect is nothing but it's an external display of the mood and emotion that is felt internally. However, the mood can have a spectrum from a depression pole or episode to the opposite end of affective, that is mania, being the other pole. So since the affective components are poles apart, that's why we have a terminologies like unipolar depression, wherein the patient who just experience depression pole or episodes, they are said to be unipolar depression. Bipolar depression, wherein the patients who experience either manic or depression pole at different times or during the course of illness. Coming on to the other terminologies like mixed mood state, wherein patients simultaneously experience depression and mania. Hypomania, it is lesser degree of mania. When I say lesser degree, I mean the severity when compared to mania and the duration is shorter when compared to the full-blown manic episodes. Now, what are rapid cyclers or rapid cycling? A patient who experience that is switching fastly between the manic episodes and the depression episodes as good as 4 times in a year are said to be rapid cyclers or rapid cycling. Now let us see some mood episodes. For example, if you consider this gray line as a normal mode, that is euthymia or euthymic. What is manic episodes are? These are abnormally elevated, expansive or irritable mood. What is major depressive episode is? It's a depressed mode or the loss of interest or pleasure coupled with some other symptoms. This is said to be depression or a full-blown depression episodes. So what is hypomanic is? Though it is elevated, expansive or irritable mode, however, its severity and duration is usually shorter than the full-blown manic episodes. That's why we call it as an hypomanic. So what is mixed episodes is? Those which meets the criteria of both a manic episode, okay, a manic episode, and then a major depressive episode are said to be mixed episode. So what is dysthymia is? It is the lesser degree form of depression. Let us see some other terminologies like bipolar disorder, like bipolar 1 and bipolar 2 disorder. In bipolar 1, here there is occurrence of at least one manic episode or the mixed episode. However, in bipolar 1 disorder, we do see there are some depressive episodes as well. But however, this episode is not considered or not taken into consideration for the diagnosis. In bipolar 2 disorder, one or major depressive episodes and at least one hypomanic episode to say it as a bipolar 2 disorder. Then coming on to the pathophysiology of the bipolar disorder, one of the component is it is genetically determined, wherein a genomic wide studies, they have linked some chromosomes, like for example, chromosome number 8 and 13q. Some of the genes which are attributable and genetically determined, which determines the bipolar disorder, are genes that encodes for disbinding protein and the neuroglin 1 protein. And the other attributable genes are polymorphisms of the genes which encodes for glycogen synthase kinase 3 and brain-derived neurotropic factors, that is BDNF. There are some other pathways because of abnormality which may be responsible for the mood swings in the bipolar disorders. For example, beta-catenin pathway dysregulation or the GPCR or monoamine signaling pathway dysregulation. Now, what is the normal function of beta-catenin is, beta-catenin, once it enters into the nucleus, it kind of increases the transcription factors, which increases the synthesis of this neurotropic factors, that is BDNF, that is brain derived neurotropic factor, which is responsible for stabilizing the mood. Now, how exactly it stabilizes the mood is by this mechanism, that is, it promotes the growth and the development of immature monoaminergic neurons, especially the serotonergic neurons and the non-epinephrine neurons, which have an important role to play in the mood. Some other functions of the brain-derived neurotropic factors are neuroplasticity, that is cell-to-cell communication, neuroprotection, that is cell survival from the oxidative stress, neurogenesis, and synaptogenesis. Now, what happens in case of chronic stress or pain or during chronic comorbid condition? There is a decreased brain-derived neurotropic factors, which can be seen as neurotropic hypothesis in depression episodes. Okay. However, what is the normal function of this monoamine signaling pathway is, once it goes and occupies to the GQ subtype of GPCR receptor, normally it increases the PIP2, that is phosphoinositol bisphosphate, which gets converted into inositol triphosphate, which further gets converted into inositol monophosphate, which in the presence of enzyme known as inositol monophosphatase gets converted into inositol. Now this inositol acts as a precursor for the phosphatidyl inositol bisphosphate. Now, once there is a conversion of IP3, it helps to activate some of the signaling cascades like protein kinase A and calcium colmodulin kinase. So this acts at the level of nucleus to increase the brain-derived neurotropic factors, which has the following function. Now, it has been observed that the manic episodes is attributable to the increased BDNF. So because of the dysregulation of the BDNF, there is mood swings. However, if you see the classical the mood stabilizer, like in the form of lithium, they act by several mechanisms. Okay, now how does it is helpful in case of manic episodes during bipolar disorder is, lithium acts by inhibiting the GQ subtype of GPCR receptor, therefore decreases the synthesis of phosphatidyl inositol bisphosphate, thereby decreasing the IP3. Okay, thereby decreasing the formation of inositol, which is also a precursor for this PIP2. The other mechanism is it also inhibits the inositol monophosphatase and then decreases the synthesis of inositol once again, which is a precursor for the PIP2. So since there is a decreased component of these two, that is PIP2 and IP3, it decreases the activity of the protein kinase A and the CAMK on the nucleus, which decreases the brain-derived neurotropic factors, hence decreases the manic presentation or episodes of the bipolar disorder. So therefore, by increasing the BDNF, it tends to recover from the depression episodes. Now, how exactly it increases the BDNF is by acting on the glycogen synthase kinase. So lithium inhibits the glycogen synthase kinase, which normally breaks the beta-catenin. Since it inhibits the GSK, lithium, the influence of the GSK on the beta-catenin is lost. Therefore, it increases the BDNF once again, which stabilizes the mood. That is, the low mood is brought now to the near euthymic or the normal mood. So that's how the lithium helps in stabilizing this level, and therefore the stabilizes mood in the bipolar disorder. Coming on to the other examples of the mood stabilizers, anticonvulsants and its therapeutic status, that is the examples being valproate, carbamazepine and the lamotrigine. So for the MCQ point of view, you have to remember these are the only anticonvulsants which are used as in mood stabilizers. However, there are some which have uncertain efficacy, like topiramate, topiramate, gabapentin, and pregabalin. Okay. However, these are the only three as on date, it is used as a mood stabilizers, which has proven efficacy. Some other examples are typical antipsychotic agents: aripiprazole, olanzapine, risperidone, quetiapine. The therapeutic status is they are mostly used in the acute mania along with the lithium. The reason being they are one of the fastest acting mood stabilizers. Coming on to the classical mood stabilizer, that is lithium and its mechanism of action. We already seen few examples. I mean, the mechanism, that is they act by inhibiting the inositol monophosphatase, therefore decreasing the inositol and the PIP2, and further, the process of decreasing the IP3 and decreasing activity of protein kinase A, and then overall decreases the brain-derived neurotropic factors, and hence helpful in the treatment of manic symptoms. However, by inhibiting the GSK, that is glycogen synthase kinase, it increases the beta-catenin level at the level of hippocampus, and then it helps in improving the mood stabilization, especially by acting on the depressive mode in the bipolar disorder. The other mechanisms being it acts by inhibiting the protein kinase C, which alters the tyrosine hydroxylase activity. That is the very first step in the catecholamine synthesis. Therefore, it modulates the release of neurotransmission, and then especially it has an important role in the norepinephrine and the serotonin level to modulate. The other mechanisms are it decreases the gene expression of the phospholipase A2 and COX2, that is it acts as an anti-inflammatory process on long run, and it increases the expression of the BCL2, that is B cell lymphoma 2 cells or proteins, and this is known to have a neuroprotective effect on the long run. Now, it's been also seen that there is a disturbance in the circadian rhythm in case of depression, especially. So, therefore, this lithium also tend to modulate the clock gene, which normally helps in resynchronizing the circadian rhythm. Okay, these are the different set of mechanism of action of lithium apart from its action on the inositol monophosphatase and GSK. Coming on to the kinetics importance of lithium, on giving orally, it has a good absorption and it has very low volume of distribution. Let us see its importance in the toxicological part. However, it is eliminated from the renal system. And one point to remember here is lithium normally competes for the sodium for its reabsorption at the level of proximal tubule. Now, what is the importance of this is whenever there is a deficit of sodium in the body, lithium gets absorbed from the proximal tubule. So therefore, it can cause lithium toxicity. So therefore, thiazide drugs, which normally loses sodium, then a severe diarrhea condition, once again, which causes sodium deficit, can be trigger for increasing the risk of lithium toxicity by the nature that it helps in reabsorption of the lithium from the proximal tubule. Now, coming on to the forensic importance, that is the concentration in the saliva is usually twice that of plasma concentration. However, in case of tears, it is equal to that of plasma concentration, and in sweat, it is 4 to 5% of the plasma concentration. And in CSF and brain tissue, it is usually 40 to 50% of the plasma concentration. So therefore, it becomes important during the course of treatment, to adequately give the dose and the frequency so as to achieve its level at the level of brain tissue, especially to show its efficacy. Since on giving a dose, it achieves only 40 to 50% of the plasma concentration. The half-life of the lithium is 24 hours, especially in the brain tissue. Now, why is it important to know the half-life is? If we consider half-life to be 24 hours at the level of brain tissue, it means that it requires at least 4 to 5 half-life to reach a steady state plasma concentration. So once it achieves the steady state plasma concentration, it can produce better efficacy of the response, which means that 4 to 5 half-life, even if we consider on the higher side, that is 5 days, 5 half-lives, which means that it will take at least 5 days to achieve the steady state. So which also means that it cannot be used in the acute mania, because to achieve steady state itself, it takes 5 days. But however, you will see in clinical practice, it is still used in the treatment of acute mania, of course, along with the atypical antipsychotics. The only reason here is to prevent the further recurrences or the episodes of the mania. The other mechanism by which it takes time to show the effect is it acts at the molecular level, that is at the level of nucleus. That is, if you have seen the previous slides wherein we discussed that IP3 gone increases the activity of protein kinase A, and then calcium colmidulin kinase, and then which acts at the level of nucleus, and then it increases the level of BDNF. So all this to happen, the change at the level of neurons, even to convert from immature to mature monomyogenic neuron, it takes time. So therefore it takes at least 6 to 10 days to show its effect. So therefore the reason, along with the typical antipsychotics, it is given in case of acute mania. However, the therapeutic range for the treatment of acute mania, if you see, it should be somewhere around 1 to 1.5 milli equivalent per liter, and the long-term prophylaxis 0.6 to 1 milli equivalent per liter. If you see very closely, you will also observe that the toxicity profile is considered when its serum level goes more than 1.5 milli equivalent per liter. If you see, there is a very small or narrow gap between all these three. So therefore, it is considered to be a narrow therapeutic index drug. So therefore, for all the narrow therapeutic index drugs, we need that therapeutic drug monitoring to be considered. Okay, a small change in the dose can cause change in the efficacy or the toxicity profile of a drug. However, the treatment of choice in the lithium toxicity is hemodialysis. Now, this hemodialysis is preferred or indicated only if there is a severe symptoms of the lithium toxicity, or if the lithium level goes beyond 4 milli equivalents per liter, and if the patient is having a comorbid condition like in the form of renal impairment. Coming on to the uses, we have already discussed the rationale of using the lithium along with the atypical antipsychotic agents in acute mania. In case of bipolar disorder, it is usually used as a maintenance therapy. However, the other drug which are used is valproate. But however, it has a very tricky situation in pregnancy. That is, in case of acute episodes in pregnancy. However, atypical antipsychotics are usually preferred, or the ECT, that is electroconvulsive therapy. Now, why not lithium? You already know that for the fact that lithium has no teratogenic potential, especially when used in first trimester, it can cause abstinence anomaly. It has also a prophylactic role in the cluster headache, and it is used in unipolar depression as an adjunct, not as a monotherapy, and also in case of resistant major depression, for the fact that we have already seen that it has tendency to increase the BDNF and then increase the and then improve the mood stabilization. Okay, so therefore it is used, of course, along with the antidepressant. However, the therapeutic level should be maintained at this range, that is 0.4 to 0.8 milli equivalent per liter. Because of its some other property, like for example, it increases the granulocyte colony stimulating factor, and it has also a property to proliferate the pluripotent stem cells. Therefore, because of this reason and this property, it increases the leukocyte, that is polymorphonuclear leukocyte, to the extent that up to 12,000 to 15,000 cells per cubic mm. So because of this whole property, it is used in the treatment of granulocytosis. And also the fact that because of its ability to proliferate the pluripotent stem cells, it is also used to extract the or to harvest the stem cells from the plasma. Coming on to the side effect profiles of lithium, it is divided into two, that is early and the late or the long-term side effects. Let us divide it into system-wise. Coming on to the first, the CNS, it can cause fine tremors. However, the drug of choice for this, non-selective beta blocker, that is propranolol, it can cause somnolence, it can cause pseudo-tumor cerebri. So therefore, the ophthal examination becomes an important here, because it can cause papillary edema and the presentation in the form of headache. So therefore, this has to be taken care in the initial assessment. Thyroid, it can cause goiter, silent thyroiditis, or subacute lymphocytic thyroiditis. It's mostly seen in the women's, and it's been seen that in most of the population, at least 50% of this population shows autoantibodies. However, it can also cause hypothyroidism because of its ability to inhibit the synthesis and the release of thyroxine, or T3 and T4. Okay. However, rarely it can cause hyperthyroidism. But all these together, these side effects which are attributable to the thyroid, it is not a reason to stop a therapy, because the benefit is more than the risk for a patient here. Okay, so therefore it is not a reason to stop therapy. Okay, this can be an important point to remember in ruling out the option. Coming on to the cardiovascular system, it is on ECG, it can cause T wave flattening, but however, on the higher dose during toxicity profile, it can cause SA node block. An endocrine, it can cause weight gain, however, it is because of stimulating the appetite center in the hypothalamus. In dermatological conditions, or it can exacerbate the existing conditions like psoriasis and acne vulgaris, and other side effect profile, it can cause alopecia and muscle weakness, however, it is a temporary. Coming on to the long-term effects of lithium therapy, on CNS, it can lower the level of memory, it can cause delirium and cogwheel rigidity, and on renal system, it can cause interstitial fibrosis, a pathological change, tubular atrophy, and it can cause nephrogenic diabetic insipidus. How exactly it causes nephrogenic diabetic insipidus, I shall discuss in the next slide. And coming to the importance with respect to pregnancy and fetus, however, when given to a pregnant lady, especially during the first trimester, it can cause abstinence anomaly. In later course of pregnancy, it can cause, after delivery, the baby can have neonatal goiter. It can cause CNS depression to a fetus and hypotonia, which is also known as floppy baby syndrome. So try to remember it as a early and long-term side effects. I said, what is the rationale of how exactly the lithium causes nephrogenic diabetic insipidus is, lithium has very, very high affinity for the epithelial sodium channel. Do you remember where this epithelial sodium channel are present? Yes, epithelial sodium channels are predominantly present on the distal cells, okay, distal convoluted or the collecting tubules. Now what happens, since it has very high affinity for the epithelial sodium channel, which are present on the luminal side, it goes and accumulates in the DT cells. Okay, so what exactly happens in DT cells are, it decreases the vasopressin or the ADH sensitivity to DT cells, and other thing is it also inhibits the glycogen synthase kinase. So thereby what happens is it decreases the translocation or the translocation of aquaporin to the membrane side, or decreases the synthesis of the fresh aquaporin 2. So once there is a decreased number of aquaporin 2 channels, it causes loss of water from the body. So that's why we call it as an lithium induced nephrogenic diabetic insipidus. However, if you see this epithelial sodium channel, it also becomes as an important target for one diuretic, that is potassium sparing diuretic, that is amiloride. So amiloride acts on the luminal side, and it blocks the epithelial sodium channel. Therefore, the entry of lithium is also inhibited into the DT cells. So therefore, it becomes a drug of choice in lithium induced nephrogenic diabetic insipidus. Coming on to the lithium toxicity, however, there was a recent question which was asked. They will give some other toxicity as well, and depending upon the signs and symptoms, you have to attribute the particular presentation to a different toxicity. They will give in a form of MCQs. However, the latest one which was asked was lithium toxicity. Let us see some of the presentation of lithium intoxication. That is on CNS, particularly it can cause cerebellar toxicity, like in the form of cerebellar ataxia and the classical nystagmus. It can cause confusion, and the renal system, which we already discussed, like in the form of nephrogenic diabetic insipidus, which presents in the form of polyuria and polydipsia. Cardiovascular system, once again we discussed that it can cause SA nodal block to the extent that it can cause hypotension and shock, and the worst form, even it can cause at the level of respiratory system, it can cause acute respiratory distress syndrome. However, it is said to be toxic when the level goes beyond 1.5 milli equivalent per liter, and the patients are expected to have a complete recovery if and only if the average maximum level is 2.5 milli equivalent per liter. The chances of death are more if the mean maximum level is 4.2 milli equivalent per liter. So therefore, in the initial treatment, the gastric lavage and the even whole bowel irrigation is done. However, activated charcoal has no role because it doesn't absorb the lithium. Don't write as an activated charcoal to be used in the lithium toxicity, unlike we use in most other toxicities. However, the treatment of choice remains hemodialysis. Now, what is the rationale of hemodialysis here is, because of its property to have a lower volume of distribution. Since it is only restricted now to plasma, now it becomes easy to filter from the dialysis. So therefore it is easily accessible because of its lower volume of distribution, and also lower molecular weight because it can easily filter once again from the dialysis membrane. It has only a 7 molecular weight as a Dalton as a molecular weight. But however, if you see clinically, most of the drugs belong to a molecular weight of between 100 to 1000 molecular weight. So that's the importance of lithium toxicity. Now coming on to the therapeutic status of atypical antipsychotics as a mood stabilizer, let us see how exactly it acts. Mechanism of action is by inhibiting the 5-HT2A receptor. That is, we already discussed in the antipsychotic agents class. That is, it inhibits the glutamate hyperactivity, inhibits the dopamine release, and which is responsible normally for the elevated symptoms. Therefore, by inhibiting the dopamine release, it decreases the manic episodes. The other mechanism being partial agonistic activity at the level of 5-HT1A, which inhibits the glutamate activity, which increases in turn the dopaminergic activity, which helps in improving the depression symptoms. So therefore, this is the rationale of using partial agonistic at the 5-HT1A and inhibiting the 5-HT2A receptor. The other mechanism attributable are by inhibiting the alpha-2A receptor, which increases the serotonin and the norepinephrine. So therefore, which has an important role in the unipolar depression. The other mechanism we have seen in the antipsychotic class, that a typical antipsychotic like quetiapine also have a property of inhibiting the norepinephrine transporter. Thereby, it has a role in case of bipolar depression even. Let us see the therapeutic status of anticonvulsant like valproate. Valproate, it acts by inhibiting the VSSC, that is voltage sensitive sodium channel. Now, what is the function of this voltage sensitive sodium channel is? Normally it increases the glutamate neurotransmission. However, by decreasing the glutamate neurotransmission by inhibiting this channel, it decreases the neurotoxicity on the monoaminergic neurons. And and it also have the ability to increase the GABA level, that is by inhibiting its metabolic enzyme like GABA transaminase. It also increases the release of GABA from the presynaptic terminal. So thereby these two a property of valproate majorly has anti-manic action. However, the other mechanism attributable are its ability to inhibit the GSK3, that is similar to that of lithium. And other important which distinguishes from rest of the mood stabilizer is it also tend to stimulate this kinase that is known as ERK, that is extracellular signaling regulated kinase, and stimulates the BCL2, that is B cell lymphoma 2 protein, which both have neuroprotective role. Carbamazepine, it acts by inhibiting the once again voltage sensitive sodium channel. However, if you see these two are mostly used in the manic episodes of the bipolar disorder. How different is lamotrigine from valproate and carbamazepine is it acts by inhibiting the voltage sensitive sodium channel. It inhibits the glutamate release, thereby it has an important role in the bipolar disorder, especially in the depressive phase of the bipolar disorder. Now, the problem with lamotrigine is it has an increased tendency to cause rashes initially, to the extent that it can cause Stevens-Johnson syndrome, or the worst form of that is toxic epidermal necrolysis. So therefore, it becomes an important strategy during the course of treatment to titrate the dose as titrate the dose in order to prevent this extreme form of necrolysis of the skin. So therefore, it is not used in the acute mania, rather it is used as a maintenance therapy because of this titration which is required. Okay, so therefore it is used as a maintenance therapy in the lamotrigine, unlike the valproate and the carbamazepine, which can be used in the acute episodes as well. Now, coming on to some of the conditions and the drugs used. Acute mania, which we already discussed more or less, atypical antipsychotics, because of its ability to to block the 5-HT2A receptor, and then partial agonism at 5-HT1A, and the fact that it acts more fastly, and therefore it is used in the acute mania. Along with that, anticonvulsants, which has a role, are valproate and carbamazepine. It acts as early as within 3 to 5 days. and the benzodiazepines and its therapeutic status is only if intermittent agitation is expected, or insomnia, or if the patient is not controllable by the typical antipsychotics or anticonvulsants. Then coming on to the maintenance treatment for the bipolar disorder, the drugs which are used are olanzapine, quetiapine, aripiprazole, risperidone, and the lamotrigine. Rapid cyclers or the mixed episode, they usually responds to the valproate treatment. Of all this, try to remember this important strong statement which I am going to say. This is, of all the mood stabilizers that we have seen, only lithium decreases the suicidal tendency. So therefore, if the question is asked which among the following mood stabilizer decreases the suicidal tendency, it is only lithium. If you recall from the atypical antipsychotics, or for that matter from the entire antipsychotic agents, the only drug which decreases suicidal tendency is, if you're saying clozapine, you are in the right direction. Anyways, try to remember this one important statement once again. Withhold lithium therapy for 24 to 48 hours before delivery. Okay, now why is the question? Why? Because immediately after the delivery, this is what it happens, that is, it causes a diuresis, which is known as postpartum diuresis. Once there is a diuresis, there is a loss of sodium. Once there is a loss of sodium, there is an increased tendency of lithium reabsorption from the proximal tubule. Therefore, it can cause maternal and neonatal serum toxicity, that is lithium toxicity. Thank you. Thank you. That's all from this session. I hope you were able to understand the concept and the pathophysiology, which helped you to integrate the targets from the pathophysiology, and then we try to establish the connection between the mood stabilizers and the therapeutic status of the different drugs in the different episodes of the bipolar disorder. So if you're able to get the most of the information from this concept, kindly share this video, pass on the information, and subscribe for the further notification. Thank you.